Hello. so we'll talk about Mirabai of Rajasthan again and how she influenced my life. Well, after having read that book, I was totally fascinated and spent 4 years of my life till I was 20 to try and get invited to the place where the woman lived who had written that book. And of course, that meant that, first of all, me, who was trembling and shy at the age of 20, had to leave Germany and face traveling in a totally different world in India until I've reached the gates of the ashram where the lady lived who had written the book. And the term ashram is very much a provocation in the West. And I think nowadays in India also, partly because normally the thought is that only people who want to escape life and who can't cope, they disappear somewhere there, and it's a kind of an escapism. Personally, I must say I found rather the opposite. What an ashram is really meant for is for an inner change. So especially if the wisdom teacher is still there, or is somebody who applies an kind of a discipline, an inner discipline, one has to face oneself very much, and one has to change oneself, which works more or less, and one can never be sure, even after years, whether one will succeed and where one will end up, because it's essentially a journey into the unknown. An inner change is actually that what yoga is really meant for. In the West, we mostly know hatha yoga means that kind of sort of deepened gymnastic, which is meant to keep the body healthy and a certain equanimity of mind. But really, yoga is a deep philosophical approach of the individual soul towards the universal soul. If we assume that there is a universal soul, if you're an atheist now at this point, now you might not be listening anyways. But this approach, and here I want to quote one of the greatest yogi philosophers of modern India, whose works schools teach. Every educated Indian knows about Sri Aurobindo. And here he explains what his yoga is. The teaching of Sri Aurobindo starts from that of the ancient sages of India, that behind the appearances of the universe there is the reality of a being and consciousness, a self of all things, one and eternal. And here in that sentence is already hidden a truth behind Hinduism, which many Westerners do not know. Many Westerners perceive Hinduism as polytheism, because there are, of course, so many characters of the divine. There are Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, and there are the Shaktis, means the different goddesses. All these divine individualities are there. But the truth is that Hinduism is a monism. That behind all those different forms of the divine, there is the belief in the one unity, one and eternal. So the next sentence. Okay, Sri Aurobindo has a tendency to have these really long sentences, and due to his absolutely supernormal intelligence, it's a bit tough to read him sometimes. But it's worth it. All beings are united in that one self and spirit, but divided by a certain separativity of consciousness, an ignorance of their true self and reality in the mind, life and body. Now I guess we can all agree that we very much perceive us as divided from our surrounding. In fact, there are these inner stages where we are very depressed and sad, where we spontaneously feel us as totally lonely and separated from all around us, and we feel different from everybody else, and this can go into depression even, that this feeling becomes so strong that it sort of blocks all our activities, that we are so unhappy. And here Sri Aurobindo postulates that the opposite is actually the truth, that we do belong to everything, that we are part of everything. Oh, that reminds me, actually, a few days back I was in the church choir here in Austria, and we sang a folk song. And this folk song it's a traditional folk song. The main theme was that sense of oneness that one can perceive sometimes in nature. Of course, in Austria there's that beautiful nature, and in the song the main theme was that due to this perception of nature, there was this, the singer, the composer of the song, describes that feeling of oneness, of harmony, and which causes an incredible bliss. So this is essentially why we could turn to Indian wisdom, because this is the main theme of yoga, to find back into that feeling of oneness. And as Sri Aurobindo says, it is an ignorance of the true self, an ignorance of the true reality of oneness, which keeps us from experiencing the bliss of oneness. Yet Miraji's attitude towards the infinite is another one still. And I find it here in Rumi, another great mystic, a Sufi, and he describes it like this. This is from chapter 18 from that book. Gamble everything for love. To a frog that's never left his pond, the ocean seems like a gamble. Look what he's giving up: security, mastery of his world, recognition. The ocean frog just shakes his head. I can't explain what it's like where I live, but someday I'll take you there. So Rumi is here assuming that most of us are frogs in a pond. We want security, we want mastery of this world. At least we have temporary, normally a kind of a feeling of mastery. We know our path in life, we know what the collective around us expects. And for that we get recognition. We gain a kind of a personality with which the other perceive us. But are we really that? What are we really? And the ocean frog has a totally different perspective here. And in fact, the experience of the infinite ocean, how can this be transported to the frog in the pond? Actually only by being taken there. And now, this exactly is what I found in Miraji's songs. So that is what I find that Miraji's songs do to us. This is what she offers. She takes us out into the inner worlds, where the ocean opens, where we get an experience of the infinite. And so, if you're one of these souls who want to have a continuously unfolding truth, who don't want confined conclusions, then you might want to follow her songs.